In his 20s and 30s, the eminent early 19th century literary figure Samuel Taylor Coleridge intermittently would pack his knapsack, put on his hobnailed boots, and collect his walking stick so that he could undertake rough, difficult walks, sometimes traveling more than 30 miles a day, and sometimes climbing difficult rock faces. He preferred physically demanding terrain. In 1794, he hiked through Wales, a 600-mile journey. In 1799, he spent 9 days walking 100 miles among the fells in the English Lake District. Again in 1799, when he went to study German philosophy in Göttingen, he walked long and hard through the countryside. And finally, in 1803, he undertook a 263-mile trek in Scotland. During these excursions, there were moments of terrible discomfort.
I am no novice to mountain mischiefs, but such a storm as this was I never witnessed, combining the intensity of the cold with the violence of the wind and rain. The raindrops were pelted, or rather slung against my face by the gusts, just like splinters of flint, and fell as if every drop cut my flesh. My hands were all shriveled up like a washerwoman's, and so benumbed that I was obliged to carry my stick under my arm. Oh, it was a wild business. Such hurry-scurry of clouds, such volleys of sound.
Coleridge withstood this physical discomfort, for he loved and found sustenance in the topography of rivers, meadows, mountains, and the skies. He located himself in the shapes, colors, and movement of the landscape. They created the texture of his creative life. As a young man in 1793, he wrote a sonnet celebrating his love for the landscape and his longing for the pleasures associated with the river otter of his childhood.
Dear native brook, wild streamlet of the West, how many various fated years have passed? What happy and what mournful hours since last I skimmed the smooth, thin stone along thy breast, numbering its light leaps. Yet so deep impressed sink the sweet scenes of childhood that mine eyes I never shut amid the sunny ray, but straight with all their tints thy waters rise, thy crossing plank, thy marge with willows gray, and bedded sand that veined with various dyes gleamed through thy bright transparence. On my way, visions of childhood. Oft have ye beguiled lone man's cares, yet waking fondest sighs, ah, that once more I were a careless child.
On his walking tours, Coleridge kept notes of what he saw as he moved through the landscape. Sometimes, frustrated that his words were insufficient to capture the immediacy of the moment, he recorded his struggle to articulate what he saw.
Without drawing, I feel myself but half invested with language.
To compensate for the inadequacy of words, Coleridge frequently executed line drawings to capture the angle, the geometric shape, and the movement of what he saw. A passage from a walk he took in Germany in May 1799 voices his desire to resort to the geometric idiom and depict the landscape's topographical lines.
And now we arrived at Hartsburg hills ever by our sides. It were idle in me to attempt by words to give their projections and their retirings, and how they were now in cones, now in roundnesses, now in tongue-like lengths, now pyramidal, now a huge bow, and all at every step varying the forms of their outlines. Or how they now stood abreast, now ran aslant, now rose up behind each other, or now presented almost as a sea of huge motionless waves, tuned multiform for painting, too multiform even for the imagination to remember them. Yea, my very sight seemed incapacitated by the novelty and complexity of the scene.
Another passage from his notebooks, entered a year later when he was walking in the Lake District, also reveals his impulse to draw and follow the lines visible in the landscape before him.
Traveling along the ridge, I came to the other side of those precipices, and down below me on my left. No words can convey any idea of this prodigious wildness. That precipice spine on this side was but its ridge, sharp as a jagged knife, level so long, and then ascending so boldly. What a frightful, bulgy precipice I stand on. And to my right, how the crag plunges down like a waterfall, reaches a level steepness, and again plunges.
When Coleridge moved through a landscape, he was also attracted to the movement within it. As a result, he often recorded the movement of the clouds and the mists rolling over the lakes near his home.
November 1799, the Lake District. I went down to the lake by the opposite shore, the hoarfrost on the ground, the lake calm, and would have been mirror-like, but that it had been breathed on by the mist, and that shapely white cloud, the day moon, hung over the snowy mountain opposite to us. We passed the first great promontory, and what a scene! Where I stand on the shore is a triangular bay, taking in the whole of the water view. On the other shore is a straight, deep wall of mist, and 1/3 of the bare mountain stands out from behind it, the top of the wall only in the sun. The rest black. And now it is all one deep wall of white vapor, save the black streaks, shaped like strange creatures, seem to move in and down it in opposite direction to the motion of the great body.
When Coleridge took extended walks from his Lake District home, Greta Hall, he remarked on the ways in which the light and the mist shaped the contours of the surrounding mountains, hills, and vales.
September 1800. Yet ever and anon the sun is on the hills and mountains, the universal mists not dissipated, but attenuated, and sometimes the mist will dissolve wholly from some field or eminence that stands out from the rest of the landscape, bright and new-bathed. Now the hills are all in mist, but the vale all bathed in clean. One column of water, sunshine falls upon the grange. To the inverted arch the newlands clear, at the arch a wall of impenetrable darkness, a pelting shower. Clear, and a road of silver brightness from the woods far over the lake to the other side of the island vanishes. invidious blinks, the interspaces filled up by a thinner mist. Holy sunlight.
In his notebooks, Coleridge often captured the sight of birds moving through the sky.
England, 1800. Starlings in vast flight drove along like smoke, mist, or anything misty without volition. Now a circular area inclined, now a globe, now a balloon, now a concave semicircle, and still it expands and condenses, some moments glimmering and shivering, dim and shadow, now thickening, deepening, blackening. October 1803. A whole flight of small birds flung themselves down in a gale of wind into Borrowdale like a chute of stones. Each bird seemed to dart onward by projection and to descend by its own lifelessness and weight.
Coleridge was also sensitive to the movement of light as it falls upon the landscape.
October 29th, 1803, 3 o'clock. Behind which she is to sink, nearly full, not a cloud in heaven. The sky deep sable blue, the stars white in the height of the sky, but above, around, and beneath the moon, not a star. She is starless as the sun. Yet there is no gleam, much less silver whiteness on the lake. Simply, it is easily seen, and even the gratis stream straight in an oblique line underneath is not silver bright or anywhere brilliant, but rather the gleam of some baser composition, imitating silver. It is a gray brightness like the color of an ash grove in the keenest December moonlight. The mountains are dark, low, all compact together, quiet, silent.
And Coleridge followed the movement of his two small children, Hartley and Derwent, as they ran, blown by the winds that gusted in the northern landscape.
September 1802. The river is full and the waterfall is full, and silver fillets come out of the clouds and glitter in every ravine of all the mountains. It is in very truth a sunny, misty, cloudy, dazzling, howling, omniform day, and I had been looking as pretty a sight as father's eyes could well see. Hartley and little Derwent running in the green, where the gusts blow most madly, both with their hair floating and tossing a miniature of the agitated trees, below which they were playing inebriate both with pleasure. Hartley whirling round for joy, Derwent eddying half willingly, half by force of the gust, driven backward, struggling forward, and shouting his little hymn of joy.
What we have just heard was one of many passing moments of joy for Coleridge. On the whole, however, he lived a life fraught with pain, sleeplessness, and addiction. Suffering from chronic rheumatic pain, he became dependent upon opium, a dependency that plagued his life and haunted his sleep that was full of nightmares and guilt. In 1803, Coleridge began drafting a poem about the pains of sleep.
Ere on my bed my limbs I lay, it hath not been my use to pray with moving lips or bended knees, but silently, by slow degrees, my spirit I to love compose. In humble trust mine eyelids close with reverential resignation, no wish conceived, no thought expressed, only a sense of supplication. A sense, or all my soul impressed, that I am weak, yet not unblessed, since in me, round me, everywhere, eternal strength and wisdom are. But yesternight I prayed aloud in anguish and in agony, upstarting from the fiendish crowd of shapes and thoughts that tortured me, a lurid light, a trampling throng, sense of intolerable wrong, and whom I scorned, those only strong. Thirst of revenge, the powerless will still baffled and yet burning still, desire with loathing strangely mixed, on wild or hateful objects fixed, fantastic passions, maddening brawl, and shame and terror over all. Deed to be hid, which were not hid, which all confused, I could not know whether I suffered or I did, for all seemed guilt, remorse, and woe. Mine own or others, still the same, life-stifling fear, soul-stifling shame. So 2 nights passed. The night's dismay saddened and stunned the coming day. Sleep, the wide blessing, seemed to me distemper's worst calamity. The 3rd night, when my own loud scream had waked me from the fiendish dream, o'ercome with sufferings strange and wild, I wept as I had been a child. And having thus by tears subdued my anguish to a milder mood, such punishments, I said, were due to natures deeply stained with sin. For I, in tempesting anew the unfathomable hell within, the horror of their deeds to view, to know and loathe, yet wish and do, such griefs with such men well agree. But wherefore? Wherefore fall on me? To be beloved is all I need, and whom I love indeed.
In addition to his addiction, Coleridge also suffered from personal problems, namely his separation from his wife and his sense of being betrayed by his closest friend, William Wordsworth, as well as his obsessive love for Sarah Hutchinson, a woman who never completely returned his love. All these circumstances often displaced his joy of life and added to his feelings of alienation and dejection. In a poem written in 1802 and addressed to his beloved Sarah Hutchinson, Coleridge writes of his desperate and difficult life. In the following lines, from Dejection, an Ode, Coleridge speaks of his own lack of joy, but unselfishly wishes his beloved may be lifted by the spirit of joy.
'Tis midnight, but small thoughts have I of sleep. Full seldom may my friends such vigils keep. Visitor, gentle sleep, with wings of healing, and may this storm be but a mountain birth. May all the stars hang bright above her dwelling, silent as though they watched the sleeping earth. With light heart may she rise, gay fancy, cheerful eyes, joy lift her spirit, joy attune her voice. To her may all things live from pole to pole, their life the eddying of her living soul. O simple spirit, guided from above. Dear lady, friend, devoutest of my choice, thus mayest thou ever, evermore rejoice.
Throughout his depressive episodes, however, Coleridge lost neither his creative powers nor his intellectual energy. As a result, he has left us the joy of his words and the landscape of his thoughts.